Alright, Assalamualaikum. I be to Dr. Haida. Today, our group, which is from Group 11, will be presenting about one of the language teaching methods, which is the signing wave method. So basically, today we are going to explore more about this method from every aspect, like the goals, the principles, the limitations, as well as the teaching and learning process. So I would like to give a brief definition. Signing wave is actually originated in the early 1970s and was the brainchild of the late Saleb Gatigno, which one of the most influential and prolific mathematical educators of the 20th um, century. So basically, this method is a language teaching method that made extensive use of silence as a teaching method. And as you can see, the last line of the Benjamin Franklin famous quote about teaching and learning can be said to lie at the heart of silent way. So the goals are to help beginning level students to gain basic fluency in the target language or bring near native language proficiency, as well as correct pronunciation and mastery of the prosodic elements of the target language are very highly much emphasized. And in this method, pronunciation is seen as fundamental to the method, which a great deal of time spent on each lesson. A successful learning involves commitment of the self to the language acquisitions through the use of silent awareness and then active trial. And in this method, cognitive psychology is the basis and foundation. Learning is rule formation and the rules are learned inductively. And in this method, all four important skills are worked from the very beginning of the course or lesson, which are speaking, listening, writing, and reading. And the signer way belongs to the latter tradition, which portrays or view learning as a creativity, problem-solving, discovering activity in which the learner is a principal actor rather than a bench-bound listener. And this method actually emphasizes learner autonomy and active student participation. And in this method, silence is used as a tool to achieve the goal. And the teacher uses a mixture of gesture and movement to focus the student attention, to elicit as well as to evoke responses from them to ensure students interact and participate, as well as to encourage them to learn and correct their own errors. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. So I will be presenting on the principles of silent method. In my opinion, I think this method are using the traditional approach, which is the discovery learning, where learning as a creative learning a problem-solving activity. So first of all, teachers assist the student when it is necessary only. Based on the silent method principles, teachers should concentrate on how students learn, not on how to teach. Teacher uses silence and gestures to focus student attention and elicit responses for them in order to encourage them to correct their own mistake. Students also need to develop their own inner criteria for correctness to trust. Next is the classroom atmosphere also tends to be stressful. Based on the principles, the teacher should start teaching with something that the student already know and build from that to the unknown. The use of critical thinking is allowed in this learning. Moreover, in the silent method, the teacher also should be silent as much as possible, while the students are encouraged to produce as much language as possible. So, this method emphasizes how active student participation. Teacher also should avoid praises or criticism as it can discourage students from developing self-reliance that could be stressful towards the student. Furthermore, the silent method also encourages the student in terms of problem-solving learning. In the silent method principle, it is mentioned that language learners are intelligent and bring with them the experience of already learning a language. This situation also can be explained that the more the teacher does for the student, what they can do for their own self, the less that they can do for themselves. It can be said like the student should know on how to be independent toward what they are learning. So, the trial and error are fundamental method of the problem solving in this silent method. However, silent method really helps the student in terms of memory skill which is in the aspect of long-term memory. This is because, based on its principles, it stated that the teacher should make use of what the student already know. In addition of that, learning also involves transferring from, from what knowns to new context. In simple words, students need to learn and then they will develop from the thing that they have already learned before. So it is just like a continuous learning approach in this silent method. That's all for me. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Diana and Anis, for your previous presentation. So today, let me explain about the limitation for the silent wave method. So the limitation, according to Montassi of 2011, the silent wave method has many disadvantages or limitations to be used for teaching and learning process. Teaching, the objective of the teaching objective must be known by teachers clearly and they should utilize the teaching aid effectively. The symbol of the colored wooden roots or wooden rods may make the student confused. And also, the silence of teacher can make students rarely hear many active models of the true usage of language that might useful for them. This method actually being criticized because this method only focus on building structure of language, while the cultural input through the language is missed. Browning 2004 stated that materials like rods and charts in this method cannot be used for introducing all aspects of language, and some scholars state that this method actually being harsh because the learner works in isolation and the student cannot understand well in the classroom because no further explanation and also lack of two-way communication among the teachers and students. So I will pass this presentation to other presenters.
Thank you so much to the previous presenters for the explanation. Okay, so for my part, I will be explaining about teaching and learning process. In this process, there are three main roles, which are students' roles, teachers' roles, and instructional materials role. Okay, so students' role. Students in this process develop independence, autonomy, and responsibility when teachers give them tasks and a given set of situations or circumstances. And in these circumstances, students are required to acknowledge their mistakes whenever they make them and develop inner criteria to correct themselves whenever they make these mistakes. Teachers' roles. Teachers, they often act as neutral observers in classes. They will be silent during these tasks, and according to survey, teachers teach the students, test them, and get out of the way. So after they teach the students about what they need to do about a given set of situations and test them, and teachers get out of the way. So then after that, teachers will use materials. They will prepare instructional materials such as graphs, rods, charts, and gestures, even gestures of their own, in order to get responses from students, in order for the students to engage with each other. The third role is materials roles. So these instructional materials illustrate the relationships between the language within. So like they use these materials to teach language, and they promote language learning by direct association. Most common materials are rods, charts, color-coded items directly to represent the vowels, sounds, symbols of anything in the language. Next, so this is an example of um, a teaching and learning activity of a silent way method of teaching. The teacher shows the students a small red Cuisenaire rod and a bigger blue one, and says the blue one is bigger than the red one. So says the students will repeat this action. They will repeat this sentence by substituting these items using other types of models. And finally, the teacher will encourage the students to produce their own comparisons. Like the students will use other materials and other models to compare these materials. And areas of target language where questionnaire rods can be useful include word boundaries, contracted forms, prepositions, word order, and word stress. So there are many types of learning of language that can be used using these items. And students can use the rods to first represent and then to manipulate the language. Like they can use it to study one field in language, then they can use it to study another field of the language. And the next example of activity, the teacher calls a student to the front and hands them a rod. Using the pronunciation chart, teacher points out the sounds to help students form the words. Put the rod on the table. So teacher asks the class through gesture to repeat the instruction. Put the rod on the table, and the student then follows the interaction and puts the rod on the table. The next teacher points out another direction using the chart. Put the rod under the table. Follow the same process outlined in steps 2, 3, and teacher continues by asking students to direct each other to put rods in different places. So this is more of the teacher asking the students to direct each other to do activities together and to like point out each other and to ask each other do this, do that between each other. Okay, so that is all for me. Thank you.